ऐसा बोला जाता है उन्होंने खुद की थ्योरी ऑफ एवरीथिंग दी है जो कि कहीं भी पब्लिश नहीं है। और जब डेरिवेशन मांगी गई सो ही सेड कि वो डेरिवेशन के जो मेरे पास नोट्स वगैरह थे, जो भी डेटा था, वो गुम हो गया है। अब इन दोनों का आमना सामना होने वाला है। व्हाट्स अप क्यूरियस पीपल, और आज हम लोग रिएक्ट करने जा रहे हैं फिजिक्स के आई थिंक वन ऑफ द मोस्ट अगलीस्ट फाइट में। एक तरफ है एरिक वाइंस्टाइन और दूसरी तरफ है शॉन कैरोल। शॉन कैरोल बहुत ही फेमस साइंस कम्युनिकेटर हैं, थियोरेटिकल फिजिसिस्ट हैं और मैन्युअल इंटरप्रिटेशन ऑफ क्वांटम मैकेनिक्स के बहुत ही बड़े एडवोकेट हैं। ऑन द अदर हैंड जो एरिक वाइंस्टाइन है वो सूडो इंटेलेक्चुअल बोले जाते हैं बिकॉज बहुत ही ज्यादा कंट्रोवर्शियल फिगर है। ऐसा बोला जाता है उन्होंने खुद की थ्योरी ऑफ एवरीथिंग दी है जो कि कहीं भी पब्लिश नहीं है, और जो पेपर आया है उसके ऊपर भी बहुत ही ज्यादा कंट्रोवर्सीज चलती हैं। और अब इन दोनों का आमना सामना होने वाला है। कंटेक्स्ट देता हूं, दोनों ने इंडिविजुअली अपने पॉडकास्ट में एक दूसरे की बहुत बुराई की है। एरिक वाइंस्टाइन कहते हैं कि शॉन कैरोल और इन लोगों ने पूरा फिजिक्स का माफिया बना दिया है और ये कोई नया आइडिया को एक्सेप्ट नहीं होने देते। दूसरी तरफ ये लोग एरिक वाइंस्टाइन के जो आइडिया उसका मजाक उड़ाते हैं। तो फिर फाइनली दोनों का फेस ऑफ हुआ, और डायरेक्टली उस वीडियो पे हम लोग रिएक्ट नहीं करेंगे बिकॉज उसमें बहुत सारी बोरिंग चीज है, बट प्रोफेसर डेव ने बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग रिएक्ट किया था, तो वो प्रेजेंट करने जा रहे हैं। बाय द वे, मैंने इंट्रोड्यूस नहीं किया, तो हमारे साथ है एस्ट्रोफिजिसिस्ट सौरभ और फिलोसोफर ऑफ माइंड दिव्यांश मनसुखानी। और मैंने तो ये वीडियो पहले देख ली है ओरिजिनल सोर्स से ही, लेकिन इन दोनों ने अभी तक ये वीडियो नहीं देखी है। मैंने अभी थोड़ी देर पहले इनको इसके बारे में बताया, तो इनके जो रिएक्शन आने वाले वो एकदम रॉ और नेचुरल रिएक्शन होंगे। So let's start.
Hey everyone, you've all seen me make fun of Eric Weinstein a few times before, but it seems like some other science communicators are starting to get in on the fun. I'm talking about Sean Carroll, who recently pummeled Eric on the Piers Morgan program, and it's very, very funny. Let's take a look. In case you need some context on who these guys are, Sean Carroll is a well-respected theoretical physicist who specializes in quantum mechanics and cosmology, and he does quite a bit of highly reputable science communication through magazine articles, books, and public appearances. I had always been appreciative of Sean, but his status got bumped up several notches in my eyes due to this segment you're about to see. Eric, on the other hand, is an obnoxious pseudo-intellectual fraud whose sole purpose is to spread anti-academia and generalized anti-science rhetoric on the internet at the behest of his paymaster, anarcho-capitalist Peter Thiel. He's never done an ounce of science, yet pretends to be as relevant as actual scientists, while constantly shitting on them for not accepting him into their club, despite never having done anything to warrant their attention other than acting like a loser troll. Like any true grifter in this domain, he has a fake theory of everything called geometric unity, which we shredded to pieces in a lengthy video featuring him and his equally useless brother Brett.
Just to let you know, this guy has a PhD in mathematics from Harvard University. And
This guy.
Eric Weinstein. From that to now, ये फिजिक्स कम्युनिटी का मतलब सबसे ज्यादा मजाक उड़ाए जाने वाले लोगों में से एक आ गया है। अच्छा, एक कंटेक्स्ट और देता हूं। सो बेसिकली इसकी जो थ्योरी ऑफ एवरीथिंग है, आई थिंक ज्योमेट्रिक यूनिटी नाम है, उनकी जब डेरिवेशन मांगी गई सो ही सेड कि वो डेरिवेशन के जो मेरे पास नोट्स वगैरह थे, जो भी डेटा था, वो गुम हो गया है। सो नाउ ही हैज द थ्योरी ऑफ एवरीथिंग बट ही डज नॉट रिमेंबर द डेरिवेशन। तो बिना डेरिवेशन के थ्योरी ऑफ एवरीथिंग ही इज गिविंग।
क्या बात है। जस्ट अ फन फैक्ट, दीपक चोपड़ा एम्स से ग्रेजुएटेड है। मतलब सोचना कभी।
So be sure to check out that video for more background information on precisely what a fraud this guy is. Anyway, there's not much else to cover. The rest will speak for itself. So let's go ahead and get to the carnage.
For centuries, scientists have grappled with the most fundamental question of them all. What is reality? Well, up until the 20th century, it was considered to be a matter of common sense. We lived in a material and objective reality, perhaps created by God, but one that could be accurately measured and predicted. And then came Einstein, who revolutionized everything by saying that things were a lot more relative than all that.
Not a great start for Piers. Nothing about relativity contradicts the idea of our universe being material, objective, measurable, and predictable. But absolutely nobody expects Piers to understand even middle school level physics, so let's brush right past that.
मतलब यार ये तो रोस्टिंग मोड पे है ऑलरेडी।
होस्ट को ही रोस्ट करना स्टार्ट कर दिया।
मॉडरेटर तक को इज लाइक रोस्ट।
Space could bend time. Mysterious black holes existed. The universe was expanding. But even Albert Einstein failed to truly grapple with what came next, the wild world of quantum physics, where nothing plays by the rules, even Einstein's.
Okay, not space-bending time. It's one thing called space-time. Einstein didn't actually discover black holes or even coin the term. That the universe is expanding was discovered by Hubble, and quantum physics pretty comfortably predates general relativity, having begun its formulation in 1900 with Planck and getting its next boost from Einstein himself with his 1905 paper on the photoelectric effect, while general relativity was published in 1916. Look, I know none of this is that big a deal, but can't you guys pay a physics graduate student to write this teleprompter feed for $50 an hour? They need the money. The point
they need the money, he said.
क्यों सौरभ?
No comments.
No comments.
I'm
That
very-
reminds me of this show called The Family Guy, right? नहीं, The Family Man, Family Guy. पता नहीं जिसमें
Family Guy.
हाँ, The Family Guy जिसमें Louis is that mother, right? She basically says to like her kid कि यार PhD students है तो क्या हुआ यार, ऐसे मत बोलो उनके बारे में. They just made poor life decisions.
Hmm,
is, do better.
yes.
Today, the biggest brains on the planet are loggerheads over what this all means and where science goes next. Are there multiple universes? Do we live in a Matrix-style simulation? Could there be an intelligent designer?
Yes, Piers, all the top minds in theoretical physics are fixating predominantly on those three vacuous pop sci topics / religious propaganda rather than actual theoretical physics. I keep forgetting that midwits like Piers genuinely believe that theoretical physicists are sitting in a room talking about multiverses and Matrix movies all day long.
For this special uncensored debate, I'm joined by two scientists with very different answers to the very big question. Sean Carroll is Professor of Physics and Philosophy at Johns Hopkins University. He hosts his own podcast, Mindscape, and draws audiences of millions elsewhere. Dr. Eric Weinstein is a Harvard-educated mathematician. His appearances on the Joe Rogan show alone have been viewed 26 million times, and he's a regular guest on Uncensored.
The discrepancy in these introductions should give everyone whiplash. He referred to both of these men as scientists, then going on to describe Sean's resume as a working physicist, while for Eric we get a statistic about the number of Joe Rogan views he's gotten. H-index versus podcast downloads. The two most relevant metrics for determining the influence of a scholar, everybody.
And despite
That's why मैंने प्रोफेसर डेव का चलाया रिएक्शन वीडियो. काफी entertaining है ये.
both being scientific podcasting rock stars, Dr. Weinstein and Professor Carroll have never actually appeared together until now.
Dun dun dun. Eric talks shit about Sean all the time, even more than most other establishment shills. So there's a little bit of baggage that goes along with this pairing. I wonder how it'll play out.
What is your main bone of contention with Eric Weinstein?
You should probably ask Eric that. I mean, I'm a working physicist. I am a professor in a physics department. I write physics papers.
I mean, this was like a direct question. कि How do you roast Eric Weinstein? I mean, what the
Yeah,
hell?
it's like my first line is the mic drop line.
मैं
क्या
तो
कहना है
physicist है.
आपका?
It's like I am physicist, but I'm also PR trained.
I have found myself in the awkward and unenviable position of defending the establishment heterodoxy. Like, it's never what I imagined I would be doing, but there's good reasons why the heterodoxy is the heterodoxy. So I think that academic physics, even though I'm happy to disagree with certain choices they make about what to work on and what emphasis to put on there, is working in good faith. I think
I really like the point जिसने बोला कि why there is a reason कि heterodoxy is the heterodoxy. राइट, बिकॉज एरिक वाइंस्टाइन तो क्लासिक एग्जांपल जो कहता है कि फिजिक्स की फाउंडेशन खराब है, फिजिक्स कोलैप्स हो रहा है, मतलब पूरा ऐसा एलिगेशन लगे रहते हैं, स्पेशली पार्टिकल थियोरेटिकल फिजिक्स साइड में.
I think that we're trying our best to understand the universe at a deep level.
Of course, what Sean said is absolutely accurate, quite well articulated, and also demonstrative of the precise reason that this contention between Sean and Eric exists. Sean and his colleagues are scientists who do legitimate science to push the boundary of human knowledge. Eric, the not a scientist, gets paid to pretend scientists don't do that, and to go on huge podcasts to spew a bunch of horseshit and convince the general public that scientists don't do that. This generates public outrage against working scientists for no reason whatsoever, causing those in their ranks that are good with public speaking to push back. Anyway, Sean then offers some solid explanatory bits about what string theory is and how it got started, but we're here for the Eric beef, so let's skip ahead.
By the way, Saurabh, you also work on something जिसको जनरल पब्लिक इस तरीके से देख सकती है कि क्या कर रहे हैं, तो एरिक वाइंस्टाइन के लिए क्या रिस्पॉन्स होगा?
कुछ नहीं, जो आपके बस के नहीं है सुनने के लिए, आप क्यों सुनते हैं उस चीज को?
और दिव्यांश, उस मतलब फंडामेंटल का भी फंडामेंटल जैसे फिलॉसफी को अगर मान लिया जाए, So what would be your response?
वही सौरभ वाला डिट्टो यार।
मतलब कुछ
और क्या
चीजें ऐसी होती है ना जो आपके सर में घुस सकती हैं, कुछ चीजें ऐसी होती हैं जो आपके समझ में आती ही नहीं है, लेकिन आप फिर भी उसको समझने का ट्राई करते हो। और फिर उस जगह ये लोग आते हैं जो एक, क्या कहते हैं, टू वे कम्युनिकेशन का काम करते हैं। कि भाई वो पीके मूवी में देखा है ना, जैसे कि भाई एक मिडिल मैन है, ऊपर वाला, एंड देन जनरल पब्लिक। तो ये बंदा उसकी तरह काम कर रहा है, and वो क्या
एंड
कहते हैं, रॉन्ग
समटाइम्स
नंबर।
yeah. And sometimes I think that it is because of these kinds of guys that otherwise जो हमारे masses कंडीशन नहीं होते वो हो रहे हैं, है ना। अदरवाइज शायद जो हम बचपन में क्वेश्चंस पूछा करते थे कि व्हाट इज द मीनिंग, बटरफ्लाई इतनी ब्यूटीफुल क्यों दिख रही है, ग्रास ग्रीन क्यों है, वो शायद हम परस्यू करते 25-30 की एज तक आते आते भी, लेकिन इन जैसे लोगों की वजह से नहीं करते। सो इट इज
और
लाइक
एक ये भी,
बताओ।
that completely agreed, but there's another important thing कि आदमी इतना चलता क्यों है। ठीक है, कोई अगर ब्रांड है टीवी पे, इतना चलता क्यों है, लोग उसको देखते हैं। मगर उसका मेजर रीजन ये भी कि बंदा खुद को भी इसको लगता है कि भाई ये खुद ही कुछ बड़ी डिस्कवरी कर रहा है। तो बंदा एक अपनी खुद फॉल्स रियलिटी में ऐसे जी रहा है कि भाई है मैं तितली हूँ, उड़ती फिरूं चलती फिरूं। अभी उस दुनिया में जी रहा है भाई।
There is that thing, na, Shakespeare calls this thing to be the age of romanticism, where basically, खैर ये तो is part of age of romanticism, but like generally saying कि आजकल सोशल मीडिया पे जब 20 और 30s के like लौंडे लपाटे जो होते हैं, वो essentially what they want to do is to prove their worth. It's a matter of ego. सो अभी दो तरीके से वर्थ प्रूफ की जा सकती है। एक तो कुछ उखाड़ के, कुछ उखाड़ा तो जा नहीं सकता, सब लोग तो गोल्ड मेडल ला नहीं सकते देश के लिए, सब लोग तो नोबेल प्राइज जीत नहीं सकते। तो मोस्ट ऑफ देम गो फॉर द अदर ऑप्शन विच इज टू फाइंड अ कम्युनिटी दैट कैन बी ट्रिग्ड, है ना। ऐसी कम्युनिटी खोजो जहां पे आप अगर जो भी बक रहे हो कि व्हाट, देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड क्वांटम इकोनॉमिक्स, और वो लोग दे लाइक हाँ हाँ हाँ, होता है करके, देन यू फील दैट यू हैव दैट वर्थ। But I think that when it comes to like truth does not, it's not supposed to be molded as per what you think it is and so on. So you eventually you would fail as the explorer of truth. And particularly अगर आप मासेस में जाके वो बक रहे हो अपनी दुनिया भर की चीजें, और तो आप मासेस को भी इन्फ्लुएंस कर रहे हो, है ना, खराब ढंग से। दैट इज
यहाँ
कंसर्न।
पर दिव्यांश ने अपने आप को जैसे रीब्रांड कर रखा है ना इंस्टाग्राम पे, वो रिफ्लेक्ट हो रहा है एकदम। आई मीन
मैंने कैसे
अगर
रिवैम्प
इफ
करके
इफ
रखा
इफ
है
इफ इफ यू लाइक सी हिज फर्स्ट कंटेंट जो पहले वो डालता था, एकदम हाइपर एक्टिव, कमेंट करके बताओ, ये करके बताओ।
वो पता है
नाउ
तुम्हारे
अभी
वजह से आई गॉट ऑन इंस्टाग्राम। ओके, दिस आई थिंक आई डोंट नो इफ दिस विल
अभी
गो
भाई ने एक्सेप्ट कर
अप और
लिया है कि लोग गालियां देंगे तो दे, नहीं देंगे तो नहीं
नहीं
दे।
नहीं, मैं
व्यू आते
बताता
हैं
हूँ
तो
तुमको।
आए, बाहर में
मैं
जाए।
बताता हूँ तुमको हुआ क्या, ठीक है। देखो, लाइक आई डोंट नो ये क्रॉप आउट करेगा या क्या करेगा, लेकिन मैं बता देता हूँ। मैं इंस्टाग्राम पे मेरी आधे से ज्यादा मोटिवेशन क्षितिज की वजह से आती है। और देयर वाज दैट फेज जहाँ पे क्षितिज रिकॉर्ड किया करता था और मैं सुना करता था बगल में बैठ के, एंड आई वुड बी लाइक हेलो क्यूरियस पीपल, आई वाज लाइक ओह माय गॉड, क्या बात है। मेरे को भी वैसे ही कुछ करना चाहिए। तो वहां लाइक दैट वाज अ नॉट सो सेल्फ काइंड ऑफ अ थिंग दैट आई यूज्ड टू डू। तो वो सारी रील्स में आर्काइव भी कर चुका हूँ, एडिट भी कर चुका हूँ, तो अभी जो है वो।
I think that Sean and I probably agree almost completely on everything until 1972. Then you have the first really serious situation where a mysterious term is not only introduced into our common vocabulary called quantum gravity, but it takes over as a fictitious history that the central problem of theoretical physics is the quantization of gravity.
Well, we have very successful quantum field theories for 3 of the 4 fundamental forces in QED, QCD, and electroweak theory, so it would make a lot of sense to go for that last one, don't you think, Eric? But sure, just point at the current frontier of the field and scoff at it as though you know better.
The first problem that Sean and I will find ourselves at loggerheads over is that I think that making quantum gravity the holy grail of theoretical physics, which is repeated and perseverated ad nauseum, is a terrible crime.
And what is quantum
Second great
gravity?
crime-
Again, for those who are not as au fait with this as you guys, what is quantum
if I
gravity?
may, So there's a standard story that you'll hear, more or less. Sean is a part of a group of about 5 people who do most of the communication of theoretical physics to the American public.
It's just never a straight answer out of this guy. Piers wants to know what quantum gravity is, and Eric starts describing some kind of weird physics communication mafia that doesn't exist.
बाय द वे, अगर इसकी एरिक वाइंस्टाइन के कोई भी पॉडकास्ट देखो तो ऑलमोस्ट सेम ही चीज हर जगह बोल रहा है, एंड कोई भी क्वेश्चन पूछो वन वे और अनदर ये चीज आ ही जाती है अपने आप कि माफिया बन रखा है फिजिक्स में.
It's just a common technique to deflect the answer so that you don't have to answer it and just blab about it.
इससे बढ़िया तो मिचियो काकू ही था यार. मतलब सेम चीज करता था लेकिन कम से कम
माना कि हर बार पे स्ट्रिंग थ्योरी आ जाती थी.
यस,
पर आती
लेकिन
तो थी कुछ रियलिटी.
एटलीस्ट साइंस थी.
यस, एंड एटलीस्ट साइंस प्रमोशन था.
Anyone can be a science communicator, Eric. You could be one too if you valued public service. You have a huge platform and understand physics, so this is a really weird thing to whine about.
We have 2 theories that are bedrock reality. We have one called the Standard Model, which covers 3 out of 4 forces, the non-gravitational ones and all of the matter that we see in the universe, as well as something called the Higgs field and maybe some other fields as well. In the other theory, we have Einstein's theory of gravity, which was put into relatively final form before 1920, maybe by 1917. And then the claim is that the incompatibility between the two of them is that one of them is a quantum theory, that is the standard model of the nuclear forces, electromagnetism, is a quantum theory, whereas Einstein's gravitational theory, general relativity, has resisted quantization. And then, as the trope goes, that incompatibility must be resolved by forcing the children of Einstein to children of.
ऐसा नहीं लग रहा है कि शॉन कैरल के सामने बैठ के ये अपना वाइवा दे रहा है, एंड शॉन कैरल लाइक अच्छा
ऐसे लग रहा है
इज लाइक कि हाँ ब्रो, लाइक तेरा बाप है मैं इस फील्ड में.
अंदर ही अंदर पता है शॉन कैरल को कंट्रोल
एक्चुअली उसकी कंट्रोल जो उसकी आंखों में दिख रहा है, उसकी प्यूपिल ऐसे डायलेट होती जा रही है. यू जस्ट लुक एट एवरी आंसर ही इज गिविंग.
I am pretty sure that at this stage, Sean Carroll is being paid more than the other guy.
Before.
This isn't some empty claim, Eric. It's not some imaginary ideological incompatibility. They're mathematically incompatible. Discrete quanta versus continuous spacetime. People are working on reconciling them. It's hard. Since you can't do it and have never tried, maybe stop undermining the smarter, harder working people who are trying. Oh, you're just going to act like a smug douche and slather your rhetoric with bizarre metaphors like children of Einstein versus children of Bohr?
Well, it depends what you're trying to do. I mean, I can tell you why. The lead tweet in my Twitter feed is assume a traversable cosmos. If Einstein is left in force, my claim is that there are only 2 rocks that Elon's chemical rockets can get us to.
I think that was a pretty straightforward question कि quantum gravity क्या है. Elon Musk का रॉकेट कहाँ से आ गया है यहाँ पर? Did you just notice कि Elon Musk का रॉकेट के ऊपर बात हुई अभी?
And that we've allowed ourselves to fall into the misunderstanding of Einstein's theory as the map of gravity rather than the territory of where we actually live. I don't think we live in space-time at all.
Scientists are dumb and wrong. Elon will save us by taking us to other planets. We don't even live in space-time. Eric is filling up everyone's anti-intellectual bingo card pretty quick with this rant.
I would say I am the only person in Generation X to have actually been present in the room when everything shifted towards string theory, which happened in 1983 at the University of Pennsylvania, when a fellow named Edward Witten gave the first lecture that I think he ever did publicly on string theory. And his will and his mind were so powerful and his influence so completely commanding that the entire sociology of the field turned on a dime.
Reducing an entire subfield of physics down to one person clinging dogmatically to their own contributions while painting himself as somehow being at the epicenter of the history of physics. So rarely do we see such delusions of grandeur regarding the very edifice that these charlatans seek to destroy. Eric in a nutshell.
And what I claim is that Sean and I probably aren't that divided even on the mathematics of string theory. Where we're bitterly divided is that I believe that Sean thinks that the system works pretty well. I would say he's part of the 2 cheers for the institutions, meaning that he has a to be sure paragraph saying that the institutions undoubtedly have their problems and wish things could be done better, whereas I see an absolute collapse in the ethics, efficacy, productivity of this at our deepest levels.
Oh, of course you wouldn't be in disagreement about the mathematics. Otherwise, you would be challenged to refute the mathematics of string theory, which you definitely can't do. It's more about this bullshit narrative regarding universities being useless indoctrination camps rife with moral bankruptcy that waste taxpayer dollars on satanic rituals and human sacrifice. That's the juicy stuff anyway.
If you think about the impact of physics, more or less, the story of physics is the story of the world economy in the modern era. And we will be trapped here almost certainly unless you
Sean Carroll का reaction.
मैं वही बोलने वाला था कि he rolled it exactly in a similar way that how a wife would roll it when his husband is saying something extremely stupid. I'm like, take a shitload of this guy. मतलब
Yes,
क्या
like,
ही बात है.
Piers, you have to pay me more.
नहीं, but you can actually see and I can actually understand कि क्यों भाई आदमी बिकता है इतना. आदमी जिस तरीके से बोल रहा है और इसकी जो क्या कहते हैं he's quite eloquent in what he says and this is actually what sells. अगर तुम पब्लिक को कुछ भी बोल दोगे ना हल्का फुल्का which sounds scientific but is not, and it's still sound pretty
Yeah,
much mathematical in that sense.
there is that thing, like you've seen the Daniel Kruger curve, right? Peak of confidence. So like the most katil combo is that if that peak of confidence and amazing communication skills. भाई the ability that you would hold to move the masses. भाई पूछा गया था क्वांटम ग्रेविटी क्या है, आप इलॉन मस्क से लेके आप कैसे इन्वॉल्व थे एड विटन के लेक्चर में से लेके दुनिया भर का होते हुए आए हैं. तो you are obviously consuming the audience are like sticking to you, so they're more likely to be if they're not aware of the Sean Carroll side of the picture, they're most
इवन दो
likely to.
आंसर नहीं मिला कि क्वांटम ग्रेविटी क्या है.
यस, ये भी पता लग गया कि अच्छा जो काम शॉन कैरल को करना चाहिए पहले वो उससे मतलब दिस गाय इज एरिक इज लाइक कि हाँ वी डोंट डिफर ऐसे से करके. अरे भैया पहले उसको तो अपना इंट्रोडक्शन कर लेने दो, जो उसका तो अपना स्टैंस रख लेने दो, जो भी कुछ है.
मतलब this is something which is quite like a common phrase कि storytellers run the world but not the fact telling people, right? Facts बोलने से कोई दुनिया ने चलाता नहीं है. दुनिया वो चलाता है जो स्टोरी किस तरीके से बता रहा है वो. So I think this guy is actually nailed into that aspect.
Sean Carroll is one among those guys who has like really influenced me personally because of his podcast, okay, Mindscape. And if you try to understand the kind of person he is he's not trying to restrict himself to just physics, okay? He's a physicist and philosopher as well, and not just that, he invites people and they talk about like so weird things. Games के बारे में बात करेंगे podcast में, तो शेक्सपियर के बारे में बात करेंगे, तो इसके बारे में करेंगे, उसके बारे में करेंगे. So this guy also most likely happens to have that holistic sense of affiliation to basically exploration of truth, that he could probably very easily point out what Eric is doing and debunk him right away, given that he gets the opportunity to speak.
बाय द वे ऑन दैट नोट, एंड में एक सस्पेंस वाली चीज है. जो होस्ट है पियर्स, उसमें और लाइक शॉन कैरल में एक डिबेट होने वाली एक टॉपिक को लेकर, और वो किसके ऊपर होगी आगे देखेंगे.
क्या बात है, क्या बात है. अच्छा, वुड यू रादर प्रेफर कि हम लोग वो चलाएं बिना प्रोफेसर डेव के, जो कि 52 मिनट्स की है, इसलिए पूछ रहा हूँ.
वो ओरिजिनल ज्यादा लंबी है.
अच्छा ठीक है.
मैं इस देयर इज अ रीजन कि ये वाला चला रहा हूँ क्योंकि उसमें बहुत लंबे लंबे गैप है, बहुत लंबे लंबे वो है, इसलिए.
ठीक है भाई.
Be our only diversification.
I love watching Sean roll his eyes, wondering when this asshole is going to shut up. The story of physics is the story of the world economy. Oh, right. Economics is the other thing Eric pretends to understand. And if we don't stop the evil string theorists from hijacking physics, the global economy is going to tank, and Elon will have to bring us all to Mars. Does Eric think that people still take him seriously? Because this is fucking painful. After a full 5 minutes of rambling like a maniac, it's time to throw it back to Sean.
My takeaway from that, and it's brilliantly articulated, Sean, is that basically you are going to be responsible for the end of civilization as we know it.
Apparently, yeah, I didn't know, but now the weight is bearing down on my shoulders. Look, the story Eric just told is a kind of wacky and wildly misleading history of physics in the last 50 or 60 years.
अभी बोलता था एग्री करते हैं ना, पूरा फोड़ दिया घंटा.
The idea of quantum gravity is a very natural one because the world runs by the rules of quantum mechanics, as far as we know. This is the International Year of Quantum because it's the 100th anniversary of really figuring out how quantum mechanics works. And the thing about quantum mechanics is it's not a theory by itself. It's a framework in which you can do theories, in contrast with classical mechanics from Isaac Newton that came before it. And gravity, our best current theory of gravity from Einstein, the theory of general relativity, is a thoroughgoingly classical theory. Certainly, the default expectation is that someday we will better understand gravity at the quantum level. You don't have to think that because you don't have to think anything. You're welcome to come up with better theories. But again, that's the default expectation. If you have a different point of view, there's a certain burden of proof to convince people that it's interesting to contemplate this other point of view.
Translation: do better physics than what physicists do, or shut the fuck up, Eric. Was that brilliantly articulated enough for you, Piers? Sean doesn't mince words and says Eric's story is wacky and wildly misleading, just in case anyone couldn't reach that conclusion on their own.
The very simple thing you do, if I can get just a little bit detailed for a second here, because people never hear this, and I think it's really, really important to understand why string theory is so popular. If you want to invent a new quantum mechanical theory of the world, the first thing you do is you ask yourself, if I have two particles and they come together and scatter, there's a probability that different things will happen. I'm going to make photons, I'm going to make electrons and positrons or whatever, and you calculate that probability. And the famous triumph of mid-20th century physics was to show that you can do that and get a finite answer. If you're sloppy about it, your answer turns out to be infinity and your theory is on the wrong track. Everything that we know about in the physical world has a nice finite answer in this quantum mechanical realm, except for gravity. Gravity doesn't fit. And indeed, it was recognized pretty quickly that there was a good reason why gravity doesn't fit, and it was almost impossible to imagine fitting gravity in, namely that gravity interacts with everything. Gravity interacts with photons, with electrons, with quarks, with whatever. And so when you do this scattering experiment, you do the calculation, everything in the universe contributes to the infinitely big answer that you don't want to get. Apparently, what you would need is some kind of miraculous cancellation between all the different contributions from all the different fields. And people looked at that and said, we have no idea how to make that happen. Let's not worry about quantum gravity. And then string theory comes along. And again, it wasn't even trying to be a theory of gravity, but when they do this calculation, the miraculous cancellation happens in.
I mean, this was such a wonderful explanation.
Yes, yes,
मतलब कि
yes,
एक पूरे historical context के साथ पूरे flow में सब समझा दिया.
yes.
He's pretty much well versed with everything.
Finite answer to what happens when you scatter different particles off of each other. That is right now the only theory in which that miraculous happening actually works.
I don't have much to comment here. I just wanted you all to hear that so you can hear what good science communication sounds like. While Eric blusters and exclusively tries to sound intelligent, Sean actually tries to convey information and nurture comprehension in the listener. Eric does his best to put on his bored face as though he's above all of this, even though he's really just a tourist in Sean's country. Sean has explained the reason for the popularity of string theory, despite the fact that it has not produced the revolutionary paradigm shift that some were hoping for. It's because it is, contrary to popular belief, a successful model in certain regards.
Many, many physicists instantly became interested in string theory and quantum gravity who were not before. But the reason they did is not because Ed Witten is a smart guy and he towers over the field. It's because there was a calculation that showed the theory is promising. Physicists are not sheep. If Ed Witten had said we should all work on this, but everyone else looked at it and thought it wasn't very promising, he would have been ignored.
But Sean, that doesn't support Eric's narrative that academics are brainless pawns pushing pointless theories for grant money. Are you sure that physicists are smart people who can think for themselves? I think Eric needs to weigh in here.
Your response?
Yeah, I just got completely misportrayed, and this is actually, I'm glad that this is happening because this is sort of what happens when you tangle with the group of people who are supportive of this program.
Once again,
What?
exact once.
I
मतलब इस बार तो टारगेट भी नहीं किया वाइनस्टाइन को, क्लियर बताया क्या है.
Here we go. Here comes the goddamn victim complex. We all listened to you ramble for several minutes, Eric. We know what you said. Then we listened to Sean justifiably mock the precise things you definitely said. Instead of responding honestly, you're going to jump straight to the straw man accusations? Really?
The idea of forcing gravity to submit to the same quantization procedures that have been successfully applied to other forces and to matter has not worked. It has stagnated the field, and that quantum harmonization is far more important. You could also decide to geometrize the quantum rather than quantize gravity and thus quantize the geometry.
Nobody is forcing anything, Eric. People are trying things. Some people are trying to get a quantum field theory for gravity. Other people are trying other things. You're doing nothing but trying to sound intelligent on a podcast, and it's not working very well.
I mean, this is exactly what I wanted to say. Ki बंदा मतलब, so if you compare how he's speaking and what he's speaking and what Sean is speaking, you'll try to make out certain instances कि भाई ये बंदा जो है, he tries to say something which is super simple in a much more technical and a much more nuanced way कि भाई दिखने में लगे कि भाई मैं कुछ वैकी वैकी से बोल रहा हूँ. Sean is saying exactly something which is super simple but also in technical terms, but is actually very scientific as well. ठीक है. And similar with this guy tries to do and mimic that behavior. बट क्या है कि एटलीस्ट अपने को पता है कि भाई क्या क्या है क्या क्या नहीं है, तो एटलीस्ट समझ में आता है कि ये बंदा कुछ भी बक 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 कर रहा है.
अच्छा, वन
And there's
मोर
one
थिंग.
more thing.
क्या नहीं, वन मोर थिंग आई वाज सेइंग कि हम तीनों फिजिक्स बैकग्राउंड से हैं और हम तीनों साइंस कम्युनिकेशन करते हैं, लेकिन फिर भी आई एम प्रिटी श्योर कि आधी बातें जो एरिक की है वो समझ में नहीं आ रही होंगी, अदर देन दी फैक्ट कि वो जो बता रहा है कि मैं मेरे साथ ये हो रहा है, यहाँ पर माफिया है, उसके अलावा जो भी बोल रहा है मुझे कुछ सेंस नहीं बन रहा उन सब बातों का.
एक्चुअली वो ऐसे घुमा रहा, ही जस्ट स्पीकिंग समथिंग which seems
रैंडम
like
जार्गन्स
he's
फेंके
making
जा रहे हैं.
sense. Actually, it's not really that random. It's just complicating those terms, trying to make it sound like he's talking some sense, which in fact is not really that sensical, honestly.
अच्छा, and there's this one more thing that इसको ये पता है कि चलने क्या वाला है ना. सो इट्स समथिंग लाइक दिस, ही इज काइंड ऑफ नेगोशिएटिंग बिटवीन व्हाट इज अप्रोप्रिएट and what is out there in the pop culture. So, for example, pop culture very inappropriately contrasts quantum mechanics with classical mechanics, right? So, which Sean Carroll like very अच्छे से he clarifies that quantum mechanics is not in fact a theory; it's a framework under which theories happen, and so on and so forth. So, quantum mechanics can, in more appropriate way, be even applied to things as macroscopical as this, but uh, but the way Eric is trying to describe things, he is using those terms that would go in sync with the pop culture, which supposes कि नहीं क्वांटम मैकेनिक्स तो ये इलेक्ट्रॉन्स होता है, अच्छा क्लासिकल मैकेनिक्स तो ये होता है वगैरह वगैरह. So this is something that I don't know, training attained
No,
over the.
exactly. And if you look at it, like at least just contrasting कि भाई Eric और Sean क्या कह रहा है, not in general sense. So Sean, I don't know if I missed that or not. He probably never mentioned gravitation as a force itself. ठीक है, अभी ये बंदा जो बोल रहा था, ये बोल रहा है कि को fundamental forces है, इसको reconcile करना है with that, तो उसके लिए ऐसा ऐसा चाहिए. Sean has never mentioned it. He mentioned about quantization of gravity itself, like, but not about this reconciliation of these four fundamental forces, which we know
Yeah.
that gravitation is not really a force as such. If we were to talk about GR, है ना?
So देखो ये कौन सी भाषा अडाप्ट कर
हाँ, ये
रहा है,
pop,
ये ना
exactly, that's
ये
pop
पॉप
culture.
कल्चर वाली भाषा अडाप्ट कर रहा है. So now one can either think that this guy is like really dumb, or otherwise our option is to think that he's really smart, that he's willing to do like so good for us that हमारे लिए बेचारा इतनी मेहनत करके इतना डम बन रहा है. सो व्हाट इज मतलब आई थिंक जनरली अगर अपनी इंडिपेंडेंट वीडियोस में अगर बने तो भी सोचा जा सकता है, बट राइट नाउ ही इज इन कॉन्ट्रास्ट टू शॉन कैरल, इज टॉकिंग टू शॉन कैरल, राइट? सो एटलीस्ट उस स्टेज पे तो इट नीड्स टू लाइक they both need to come to one terminology, one set of nomenclature,
और
conceptual
इस
nomenclature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
और इस पूरे डिस्कशन में जो सबसे पीक सभ्यता जो अभी तक मेंटेन की वो अभी तक है, अब इसके बाद चीजें थोड़ी वाइल्ड ही होने वाली है.
भाई ये स्पॉइलर मत दिया करो यार.
स्पॉइलर
देख के
पहले
बैठा हुआ
spoiler
है.
देकर फिर बोल रहा रिएक्शन रॉ देखना है.
वही तो यार.
Wrong in the
थोड़ा
field.
पहले
The
से
dominant narrative that has been perseverated into an as if reality has created two teams, a smart team that gets it and a dumb team that just doesn't. And that kind of toxic sociology is the true problem.
Okay, we're going to get back to
Okay,
physics in a second, but a couple things.
I
real
am
quick.
going to introduce something like very like कैसे बताऊं, something that you guys must not have thought about as a philosopher, as an analytical philosopher. Let me introduce you to this thing called fallacy. Okay, so हम जानते हैं कि बहुत सारी fallacies होती हैं. स्ट्रॉमैन का भी जिक्र हुआ था, and ad hominem, getting personal, and then red herring, मुद्दे के अलावा कुछ और डिस्कस करना. But there's one fallacy called fallacy, which is कि आप बस ये मात्र बोलना कि देखो भाई साहब आपने एक fallacy कमिट की है, ये खुद भी तो अपने आप में fallacy है. क्योंकि इन द डिस्कोर्स ऑफ आर्गुमेंटेशन आपने कुछ कंट्रीब्यूट थोड़ी ना किया है भाई। इफ यू हैड सम ऑब्जेक्शन टू वॉट एवर द अदर गाय वाज सेइंग, वो ऑब्जेक्शन क्या था वो बताओ ना भाई, इंस्टेड ऑफ सेइंग देखो आपने गलत बोला है। भाई आपने गलत कैसे बोला है वो उस पे उसके ऊपर लाइट डालो ना, इंस्टेड ऑफ सेइंग कि आपने गलत बोला है, यू कमिटेड अ फैलेसी। तो ये दिस इज एग्जैक्टली व्हाट ही इज डन राइट नाउ।
First of all, what the fuck is going on with his eyes? I don't want to make fun of it if it's some medical condition or something, but this shit is bananas. He looks like a malfunctioning robot. Second, I like to imagine Eric setting up his computer for this interview and then going to get his guitar to place it in frame to try and look cool. Here's to hoping he busts it out a little later to show us his mad skills. Anyway, this smart team, dumb team thing is total horseshit. Nobody is forcing anybody to work on a particular subfield of theoretical physics. Everyone is open to new ideas, and this story is getting really old.
Eric, you've come up with an alternative theory of everything. It's based around geometric unity. The theory remains largely unpublished in peer-reviewed literature, has not yet been formally tested or widely accepted by the physics community. Now, because you're so smart about this stuff, your geometric unity paper is 69 pages long, extremely
I don't know what he meant by that.
Pause. The number of pages. The number
कहीं
of
पब्लिश
pages.
नहीं हुई, कोई रिव्यू नहीं है, कुछ
That's so smart
established
about
नहीं
it.
है.
And it exactly 69 number of pages. I mean, I wonder why.
Yes.
So we did what everyone in my position does these days. We went onto YouTube and saw if we could find anybody who'd analysed it and had a conclusion.
मतलब पेपर रिव्यूड नहीं है तो यूट्यूब पे ही देख लेते हैं फीडबैक क्या आ रहा है.
YouTube पे देख लिए, कौन करेगा YouTube पे देखते किसी बंदे ने किया होगा क्षितिज जैसे.
अरे
And we found this.
Thank you to Eric Weinstein. It's an avant-garde and creative theory. Kurt here, several months later. This has been so long in the making. Geez, you have no idea. Anyhow, I wanted to say that I mean what I just said. I may have said this before in the iceberg, and if I haven't, I should have because it bears repeating. I haven't seen a theory like this come from any single individual ever. Not one that's this fleshed out or has this amount of unexampled connections.
Well, that's a bunch of bullshit. I was on the fence about this Kurt guy, but this single-handedly proves he's a complete asshat. Geometric unity isn't fleshed out at all. In fact, it doesn't even qualify as a theory. And Piers, if you had looked around a little more thoroughly, you would have found my video where Tim Nguyen explains how GU is literally nothing. Or maybe you did find it and ignored it because it doesn't fit your narrative.
Why do you think that the mainstream...
Wait, go to the equation. I want to see that. I want to understand what the hell is. वो है क्या, वो ऑपरेटर है क्या, है शिप इन द बॉटल. मैं भी तो देख पहली बार कुछ ऐसा तगड़ा सा यूनिक सा देख रहा हूँ.
As though there is an inner product being taken somewhere, in the middle term. What
इनर प्रोडक्ट होने के लिए वो कहीं तो बीच में होना चाहिए, बंदा कुछ बाहर ही ऑपरेटर है. बट बाय द वे दिस सिंबल इज यूजुअली यूज्ड फॉर सोलर मास.
बोलने वाला था वो बूब के अंदर है भाई, छोड़ो यार अभी.
भाई मैंने बहुत रोक के रखा था अपने आप को कि ना बोलूं, वो तू बोल दिया.
ठीक है भाई. एंड ओके. अच्छा, इट जस्ट okay. Of like I don't know. See, right now it's just like bunch of random terms, right? Like with no semantics to them. But why does it feel like there should have been some negative thing, right? क्योंकि
पता नहीं यार, ऐसा फील तो आ रहा है.
that intuition coming from somewhere कि like
वो जो
zero.
कम्यूटेटर दिख तो रहा है वहां पे, क्या पता वो नेगेटिव सब
ओपन होने के बाद नेगेटिव हो जाए या
हाँ,
तो
क्या पता वो जो स्टार लगाया है टी के उधर वो भी नेगेटिव बना देता हो. ऐसे तो है भाई.
बेस्ट तो मुझे वही लग रहा है कि वो कम्यूटेटर वाला ही मुझे लग रहा है कि या तो अगर वो नेगेटिव आ जाए फिर पता नहीं कि एक तो शेप क्या है यार. शिप
मैं बताता हूँ वो क्या है मैं बताता हूँ. शायद ऑपरेटर के नॉट बी डिफाइंड नीचे लिखा हुआ है.
थ्योरी ऑफ एवरीथिंग.
yes.
वो सब तो ठीक है, पर ये एफ नीचे पाई में क्या है, मतलब कुछ ऐसा फंक्शन है पाई डिपेंडेंट. मतलब एक बंदा जब प्रेजेंटेशन बनाता भी है तो यूजुअली क्या करता है, एटलीस्ट नोटेशन लिखता है कि भाई पाई मतलब एफ ऑफ पाई है क्या, टी. अब टी क्या है यहाँ पे, टी फॉर टी प्रोबेबली, आई डोंट नो, बट इट कुड बी समथिंग.
On my video where Tim Nguyen explains...
एक्चुअली मैं सोच रहा हूँ कि भाई आपने कोई भी रैंडम स्लाइड लगा दिया, वो भी ऑब्जेक्शन 1 वाली स्लाइड लगा दिया और फिर रिएक्शन दिए जा रहे हो तुम लोग. डिफाइन तो किया है हमने सब कुछ, खैर।
how GU is literally nothing. Or maybe you did find it and ignored it because it doesn't fit your narrative.
Why do you think that the mainstream physics world is not taking this seriously enough?
Well, first of all, I disagree. You see, part of what's going on is that Sean is part of a group of physics influencers who are constantly spreading misinformation, which leads to a climate of fear.
Oh shit, shots fired. The pointless podcaster just referred to Sean as a physics influencer and accused him of spreading misinformation. Eric now deserves all of the
Also,
mockery that
like,
he's receiving.
you can, like, why don't you just send this thing to like a very good journal and it would be peer reviewed, man? मतलब मैं कैसे समझाऊं यार, मतलब लाइक इवन
भेजा होगा, वो भेजा
सामने
होगा।
वाला गंद फैला रहा है, तुम तो यार, इट कुड
There is
स्टिल
a
गेट
very good reason for that. There is a very good reason for that. और अगर इसके पेपर के स्टार्टिंग ही पढ़ोगे तो वो चीज क्लियर हो जाएगी, बट अभी मैं नहीं बताऊंगा।
अरे
और वो
Spoiler देके
नन अदर देन शॉन कैरोल खुद पढ़ के बताएंगे कि ये पीयर रिव्यू क्यों नहीं हुआ है।
क्या बात है।
ऐसा लग रहा है नोवेल लिख रखा था उसने, जो स्टार्टिंग में लिख रहा था, ऑथर्स फर्स्ट ड्राफ्ट। ये भी ठीक है।
For the next half hour. You brought this on yourself, moron. Remember that.
I, for example, found the following quote of Sean. What I really, really want to get across to the audience is that nobody in physics departments is discussing this with other people in physics departments. Now, I don't happen to be coming to you from a physics department at the moment, but I happen to be on a 5-day visit to a leading physics department. And in this situation, I just had a 9-hour conversation and talk, with 3 hours or 4 hours rather of that being an explication of geometric unity.
Yeah.
बाय द वे मैं कंटेक्स्ट दे देता हूं जो इस वीडियो में कहीं नहीं बताया जाएगा। ये जो लीडिंग इंस्टीट्यूट की बात चल रही है, पेरीमीटर की बात चल रही है, बट
अच्छा,
ही इज नॉट अलाउड टू से द नेम ऑफ पेरीमीटर।
ओके,
ठीक है, तो इसका पेरीमीटर के साथ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट साइन हुआ है कि तुमने हमारे यहाँ लेक्चर तो दे दिया, लेकिन तुम पब्लिक में नहीं बता सकते कि हमारा तुमसे कोई भी एसोसिएशन है। तो पेरीमीटर बहुत ही
पेरीमीटर लेक्चर दे कैसे दिया है?
बिकॉज ही इज फंडिंग बहुत सारे पार्ट ऑफ पेरीमीटर, तो इसने बहुत अच्छा हैवी फंड किया है पेरीमीटर में।
तो पेरीमीटर पैसा ले भी रहा है?
मना कर दिया कि नाम एसोसिएट नहीं करना है, इसलिए
ये भी
क्योंकि इसी में ही आगे ही टेक्स द नेम ऑफ प्रिंसटन एडवांस स्टडीज वाला जो है, बट पेरीमीटर का नाम जानबूझ के नहीं लिया।
Yeah, nobody in academia cares about your fake physics pretend times, Eric, and this little made-up story isn't going to change that.
He then goes into this thing that there is no crisis in theoretical.
But hold on. I'm still wondering कि पियर्स ने क्वेश्चन पूछा था कि इट इज नॉट बेसिकली लाइक फैल नहीं रही है फिजिक्स कम्युनिटी में, एंड द फर्स्ट थिंग दैट ही रिप्लाइड वाज आई डिसएग्री विद इट। अरे भैया, आप बोल क्या रहे हो कि शॉन कैरल ने आपके खिलाफ कोई प्रोपेगेंडा फैलाया है, तो मतलब कुल मिला के नहीं ही कर रही है ना फिजिक्स कम्युनिटी में प्रोपोगेट आपकी थ्योरी। तो व्हाट एग्जैक्टली डू यू डिसएग्री विद? यू शुड एग्री विद इट, राइट?
ये वैसा टाइप का हो गया कि मेरी माँ का जन्मदिन है, मैं इस बात की निंदा करती हूँ।
यस,
देखा है?
यस, मैंने तो देखा है भाई, सौरभ तुमने देखा है?
नहीं, तो जोक अच्छा था।
बेसिकली कोई न्यूज चैनल था जिसमें एक बंदा वाज सेइंग कि मेरी माँ का बर्थडे है, एंड द ओपोनेंट वाज लाइक मैं इसकी निंदा करती हूँ। अब आप मेरी माँ का बर्थडे उसकी भी निंदा करोगी आप?
One of my physics colleagues said last night, the first rule of Physics Fight Club is don't talk about the problems with Physics Fight Club.
Eric's always got an imaginary friend and a cute little quip. Too bad that doesn't turn his fake theory into real science, huh?
The idea is that a small number of people who are either at the top of the physics influencer pile, which is where I would put Sean, or at the top of the prestige pile in research, have held a view that is completely at odds with reality, whose key feature is the exclusion of different perspectives.
A little bonus shade being thrown at Sean by putting him in the influencer camp to the exclusion of the prestige and research camp. Eric, Sean works at Johns Hopkins, previously at Caltech, and is plenty influential. You whine into microphones for a living. Take it down a notch. And nobody is excluding different perspectives. They're excluding charlatans like you who cosplay as geniuses for the public while never having actually done any science.
So when, for example, I can tell, I probably can guess the AI, Piers, from which you got the analysis of geometric unity. What you see is a very strange situation where a group of people go around attempting to throw shade on anyone who questions whether there's a massive problem in physics that everybody who's actually in the game can see with their own eyes.
Piers, it's an AI conspiracy. Everyone in physics can see there's a huge problem because Eric says so, and it's just the cabal of dishonest influencers like Sean who deny this obvious fact. Other people in the field are more open-minded, which of course makes it even more bizarre that absolutely nobody reputable takes Eric seriously. There's a lot of holes in your plot, bud.
If you take a Lorentzian metric as a section of a bundle of pointwise Lorentz metrics and pull back the positive Weyl spinners with suitable passing to maximal compact subgroup, you get one generation of petit salon grand unified fermions. Now, that was very quick, but what it really just said is that general relativity knows the standard model.
He's like a teenager flexing a bunch of words he just learned to impress a cute girl at summer camp. Eric, everyone can immediately tell that you're speaking exclusively to sound intelligent. You are communicating literally nothing. Anyway, after 10 full minutes of bitching, moaning, and flexing, Eric finally decides he's talked enough, so Piers throws it over to Sean.
Sean Carroll.
Well, I find it very telling. I don't know. It makes me sad that you are looking for a second opinion about geometric unity and you go to YouTube and see what pops up. I don't think that's the standard to which we would like to aspire. There are professional physicists right there in your country who work on understanding quantum gravity, field theory, geometry at a deep level, and you could ask them what they think.
I like Sean's daddy mode. These toddlers need some scolding. Let's get some more of that.
I would like to let people out there know who might be working outside the academic physics community that it is 100% possible to have a good idea and have it have an impact on what physicists do. But it's not easy. You have to do a certain amount of work to show that your theory is worth the time, that it is respectable, that it is interesting, that it is promising. The first thing you got to do is make sure that your theory makes contact with modern physics as it is understood. If you have a new paper out, physicists are going to look at it. They're going to look for, where's the Lagrangian? Where's the interactions? Is the proton stable? Is there dark matter? Like, how does it fit into what I already know?
Those
And
are all
Eric's
different
theory,
levels of the stack, Sean.
Eric's paper has none of that.
Oh, this is the good stuff. Eric is just sitting there squirming, desperate to shut Sean up. But Sean sat quietly for 10 full minutes while Eric spewed his script, so he knows he has to play nice here. And Sean is already spitting fire. Eric's paper has nothing. It does not make contact with modern physics as it is understood. That it doesn't present anything innovative is a given, but it doesn't even say anything that's compatible with what we already know. It's truly nothing.
By the way, @geometricunity.org मतलब पूरी फाउंडेशन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का ही नाम वही रखती है ज्योमेट्रिक यूनिटी के ऊपर.
इसकी वेबसाइट खोल के देखनी पड़ेगी.
हाँ.
You would also ask, has
Excuse me?
the theory been shown to be viable in a very basic way? Is it stable? Is it free of anomalies? Is it finite in the sense of the quantum mechanical calculation that I already mentioned? Again, none of that is there. Are there any new predictions? Eric says completely correctly, string theory doesn't make any new predictions either. But also, I really don't want people to get the idea that string theory has some dominant picture. In my department at Johns Hopkins, we have... Let me just finish and then you can talk. I think it's a good system.
That's how debates happen, bro.
I think it's a good system.
You can tell that Eric has gotten used to being the only person in the room who understands physics. He's not talking to Joe Rogan or Dave Rubin. For whatever reason, he agreed to talk to Sean Carroll, and he is severely regretting it as he desperately tries to push this freight train of humiliation off the rails. Sean says, shut your dumb mouth. This is what you deserve.
In my department at Johns Hopkins, we have 6 professors.
So what Sean was mentioning, कि भाई जब we need to have a sound theory कि भाई interactions है Lagrangian दिखना चाहिए. So he absolutely makes sense. ठीक है, normally physical theory में एक Lagrangian है हमारे पास देखना चाहिए कि भाई action के अंदर क्या क्या elements हैं. Gravity हो गया, you have some particles या फिर उनका आपस का interactions है. So that actually even makes sense. So he's not just throwing random words at people. किसी ने अगर बेसिक क्लासिकल मैकेनिक्स पढ़ी होगी तो उसको भी ये चीज समझ आ जाएगी. Compared to whatever this guy was saying, fermions and blah blah. I did not understand what he said. Probably made sense to some other guy. Of course, he said those random words and probably compiled it together. I don't know whether it really makes sense or not. But anyway.
in the theoretical physics group. One of them does string theory, and even he only does it sort of half time. I wish we had more, honestly. This is very typical. Even at the most stringy departments, it's maybe half.
But wait, Eric, the not a physicist, said string theory is the devil because it sucks a lot and it's hogging all the funding in physics. You're telling me that Eric lied about that? Well, that's just shocking.
But he has given us no reason to think that it is a promising theory. I encourage other people who would like to have an impact on the research agenda of modern physics to take these easy steps rather than going on podcasts and talking about their victimization.
As Eric fumes silently, he's taken to whipping out his reading glasses and his phone. Maybe he's got some affirmations written down to keep his ego running while the world crashes down around him.
First,
By the way, Eric Weinstein is known for one thing कि जब भी वो किसी पॉडकास्ट या किसी डिस्कशन में थोड़ा सीरियस होने वाला रहता है तो सडनली अपना चश्मा पहन लेता है और थोड़ी देर बाद चश्मा एकदम रीत से रख देता है. सो ही हैज मेड हिज लाइक ट्रेड मतलब सिग्नेचर बना दिया सिग्मा बॉय वाला टाइप.
कुछ ज्यादा ही वीडियोस देखे तूने इसके लग रहा है.
रिसर्च कर रखी है.
रिसर्च यू से
इसलिए फोन नहीं उठाता है आजकल
Civil.
हमारा.
एरिक को देखा
ये अरे ये लोग तो सेन लोग हैं, हमको तो सूडो साइंस वालों का देखना है.
सही है भाई.
he's also extremely nasty, but I really appreciate the civility.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have a buddy who's always quiet as a mouse. He's also the loudest person I know, but he's quiet as a mouse. It's totally possible for people to hold two completely antithetical qualities at all times. Eric, can you even pretend to be a normal person for 10 seconds?
This is not something that is going to be a thing. He also says that he hasn't read it. So let me say a bunch of things to Dr. Carroll. Dr. Carroll, I'd like to hear your explanation for three generations of flavor chiral fermions with the observed quantum numbers under the group SU3 cross SU2 cross U1.
I thought that inventing new forms of flight.
Do you know this guy? Do you know this guy?
नहीं, कौन है ये?
ये एरिक वाइंस्टाइन का भी बाप है.
नो वंडर तुम जानते हो हम दोनों ने.
So this guy's name is Terence Howard और ये दीपक चोपड़ा इस वगैरह से बहुत ऊपर है. ये इसने अपनी कुछ इलेक्ट्रिक यूनिवर्स हाइपोथेसिस दे रखी है कि यूनिवर्स कैसे काम करता है एंड ही इज ऑन द सेम लाइन विद एरिक कि फिजिक्स कम्युनिटी समझ नहीं रही है बात को, फिजिक्स इज ऑन द वर्ज टू कोलैप्स एंड ब्ला ब्ला ब्ला, वो सारी चीजें हैं.
Innovating multiple areas, starting the being responsible for half of the AR/VR that's out there, that all of these things would be enough. And then having the wave conjugations to predict every potential harmonic node.
How can Terry be a fraud if all those things he says? Same here. Eric said words most people don't understand, so how is he not a genius? Eric is obviously smarter than Terry, but their behavior is identical, ranting to try and sound intelligent while deflecting from any attempt to present something of substance. Eric is just better at it.
I can give you an explanation for why SU3 cross SU2 cross U1, why there are 3 generations, why 16 particles in a generation, why the observed quantum numbers are the way they are, why the Higgs sector comes out of seemingly nowhere with a quartic potential with a quadratic term, why the Yukawa coupling is just there, just so in order to produce mass when the weak force forbids a mass directly in the Dirac operator.
Wow, can you really do all those things, Eric? Or are you bluffing because
I tell you that this is something that modern physics genuinely struggles with, the question that he mentions. But see, just because the modern physics, just because Sean may not have an answer, although he may have like a lot of hypotheses and all, but like just saying, just because modern physics may not have the answer does not mean कि वो question को आप उस जगह रख के उसको ऐसे पुट करो कि देखो मेरे पास है. अरे भैया आपके पास है कि नहीं, उसका इवैल्यूएशन भी वही लोग करने वाले हैं ना, मतलब पियर्स करने वाले हैं ना आपके. तो like honestly, I'm pretty sure that Sean would have read that paper, right? And come to this thing that this also does not answer the questions that you just mentioned.
एक्चुअली पूरा पेपर पढ़ने की जरूरत भी नहीं है. अगर फर्स्ट पेज पढ़ा भी जाएगा तो देख लेगा कि भाई क्या पढ़ने लायक है, आगे नहीं है, क्योंकि फर्स्ट पेज ही इंप्रेशन दे देता है कि क्या किया जाए इसका आगे.
this can't possibly devolve into a back and forth about all the esoteric stuff you're listing, since Piers will immediately change the subject. The facade is crumbling, kiddo.
Why Sean chooses to misportray the fact that I can say why there should be dark matter, what the dark energy is, what the exact quantum number assignments are for the 2 families that are luminous that have yet to be seen, I have no idea, because Sean also proudly says is that he hasn't looked at it and hasn't read it. That's why he says that there are no Lagrangians in it.
Are you sure he hasn't read it? It seems like it would have been a good idea for him to read it as a prerequisite for agreeing to this appearance. And Sean is a diligent, hardworking guy. Maybe we'll find out once Eric finally shuts up for a second.
Sean is insistent that the idea that somehow I am not choosing to go through the usual channels and instead talking as he is right now via YouTube is somehow significant when I've just given talks in 3 different countries on dark energy.
OMG, Eric, you've been to different countries? Then you must be telling the truth. Want to wrap up this little tantrum?
Which is at the moment going after Einstein's unwanted cosmological constant. That is not a constant. The dark energy is not a constant term. That is the only term that you can put into the Einstein field equations because the Einsteinian curvature satisfies an automatic differential equation called divergence free. So if you have another term in the equation, it has to have the same property. There's only one known automatic equation, which is that the metric of Einstein that creates space-time is annihilated by its own Levi-Civita connection. And Sean, you're misrepresenting things because I'm going to give a formula for the dark energy.
I know what dark energy is, okay, Sean? I know it. I'm the super genius who figured out a thing that would get me a Nobel Prize. I just can't write a paper about it or explain it in any concrete way.
बाय द वे ये डार्क एनर्जी का कॉन्सेप्ट बार बार इसलिए ला रहा है बिकॉज ही इज क्लेमिंग कि अभी जो डीसी है उसका जो पूरा स्काई ऑब्जर्वेशन चल रहा है तो वो जो नॉर्मल कांस्टेंट जो हम लोगों का डार्क एनर्जी का मॉडल है दैट इज नॉट गोइंग वेल तो इवॉल्विंग डार्क एनर्जी मॉडल थोड़ा ज्यादा फिट बैठ रहा है जिसके ऊपर स्वागत मिश्रा ने एक पेपर भी लिखा हुआ है शायद उससे रिलेटेड ही तो ही इज क्लेमिंग कि इसकी जो थ्योरी है दैट इज फिटिंग वेल विद दैट अभी 4.2 सिग्मा है 5 साल में से 2 साल का सर्वे हुआ है अभी 3 साल का सर्वे और बचेगा तो आगे देखते हैं बट अभी रिसेंटली क्योंकि ये चीज चल रही है और ये शायद 2 महीने पहले का ही शो है तो उससे ही रिलेटेड हवा में अपने थ्योरी को अच्छा वैलिडेट करने के लिए ये सारे क्लेम्स ला रहा है
Other than in super secret talks with totally real physicists in super cool places that definitely aren't made up in any way. Can you get off my back?
I do all sorts of things that you have no idea of because your attitude, which you repeat in other podcasts, and I highly advise you to spend more time in your physics department and less time on YouTube, is that this is not a serious thing. Nobody's taking it seriously.
अरे यार इसको ऐसा क्यों कह दिया यार ये
एक इसका एक्सप्रेशन देखो भाई थोड़ा सा 5 सेकंड पहले जाके इसका एक्सप्रेशन देखो यार शॉन कैरोल
which you repeat in other podcasts, and I highly advise you to spend more time in your physics department and less time on YouTube, is that this is not a serious thing. Nobody's taking it.
I mean, it's extremely hypocritical, and I don't know what to say.
Seriously, and your misportrayal of the situation is nearly constant for reasons that completely elude me.
Fire up the projector, folks. Sean needs to get off YouTube and do more physics, said the not a physicist who doesn't do physics and only matters to his delusional science illiterate fans on YouTube. But Eric is sticking with this angle. Sean hasn't read my paper, he doesn't know what's in it, and totally can't handle its awesomeness. And that's why he's misrepresenting it all over town. He's jealous of how smart and cool I am.
Sean?
The good news is I have read Eric's paper. Here it is.
I mean, shit. I mean, why would he spend and waste so much time? But okay.
Yeah.
मतलब he was waiting for this moment कि कहाँ से आए
नहीं, actually, I think he was already made aware कि भाई ऐसा ऐसा डिबेट होने वाला है तो इसलिए probably इसने पढ़ा होगा क्या भाई better to go and debate and at least पता तो हो सामने वाले बंदे के बारे में वरना I don't think he would have read it anyway.
या तो एक और रीजन हो सकता है कि इसने अपने ग्रेजुएट स्टूडेंट को बोला होगा कि यार तुम पढ़ लो फिर बता देना ग्रेजुएट स्टूडेंट होगा इसकी सैलरी नहीं देते हो आप मेरे को आप खुद पढ़ो
बट ऑल्सो क्योंकि शॉन कैरल एरिक वाइंस्टाइन की थ्योरी का मजाक उड़ा चुके हैं प्रीवियस पॉडकास्ट में तो थोड़ा ही इज अवेयर कि क्या सीन है बिकॉज ही इज अ फेमस पर्सन सबीना भी काफी वीडियोस बनाते रहते हैं ब्रायन कीटिंग वीडियो बनाते हैं इसके ऊपर मैं
और सौरभ थोड़ा हाइपोथेटिकली कर रहे हैं तुम रिसर्च करके आए हो यार मतलब
मैंने आज से पहले कसम से इसका नाम नहीं सुना था क्योंकि वही जो वो कह रहा है एरिक वाइंस्टाइन कि थोड़ा YouTube पे कम समय बिताया करो
भाई
हम YouTube पे ही समय बिता रहे हैं फॉर ऑब्वियस रीजन तो
एग्जैक्टली
It is. I actually have it here, right here. And it's worse than you.
एक चीज तुमने नोटिस की घबरा गया वाइंस्टाइन देखो गला होता है ना ऐसे देखना ध्यान से देखना
I've read Eric's paper. Here it is. I actually have it here, right here. And it's worse than you would think. It just very quickly, it starts off by saying the author is not a physicist and is no longer an active academician, but is an entertainer and host of a podcast. This work of entertainment is a draft work in progress, and it may not be built upon. So we're not allowed to think about Eric's theory and write a follow-up paper about it.
Oh, no, you're very much allowed, Sean.
To everything that is normally done in scientific discourse. You hope that people build upon your theories. You don't try to prevent them.
Looking at the pure terror in Eric's eyes, it's hard to comprehend why he agreed to this. Was he counting on Sean being totally unprepared, that he could bully him and interrupt with his physics jargon performance art for a full hour? Sean read your fake paper, and now he's going to shit on it and teach you a lesson.
And later on, it says,
Sean,
this document is...
So I just noticed one thing. Go to the date of the paper. थोड़ा सा back करो. Check it
1st
out.
April.
नाइस ऑब्जर्वेशन यार.
Yes, मतलब 10 years, from this time, Eric would be like, यार मैं तो बस ऐसे ही मजाक कर रहा था यार.
या तो ही इज एक्चुअली अ जीनियस, और ये सारी सिर्फ पब्लिसिटी के लिए उसने किया है.
Yes.
And now he's going to shit on it and teach you a lesson.
And later on, it says,
Sean,
this
people
document is an
built upon
attempt to
my
begin
theories.
recovering... I'm going to read this. This document is an attempt to begin recovering a rather more complete theory, which at this point is only partially remembered and stitched together from old computer files, notebooks, recordings, and the like, dating back to as far as 1983. And this is why this paper is not going to appear in the peer-reviewed literature. It's not serious. It's a dog ate my homework kind of thing.
मतलब बेसिकली इस बंदे ने पहले तो ये बोला कि इसके ऊपर फर्दर वर्क नहीं किया जा सकता. फिर ही सेइंग कि जो भी इसके पीछे की डेरिवेशन थी वो 1983 तक पता था, लेकिन फिर गुम हो गए. नोट्स गुम हो गए, भूल गया, सब भूल गया. तो नाउ अब इसके ऊपर वो भी नहीं बोल सकता कि मैं डेरिवेशन दे दूंगा, क्योंकि ही इज क्लेमिंग कि मैं तो भूल गया हूं.
If you have a dark matter thing, if you have a dark matter prediction, if you have a dark energy prediction, I want to see a plot in the paper. I want to see redshift versus
Sean,
distance. I want to see a calculation of a relic abundance so I can figure out how much dark matter is supposed to be. If you do that,
Sean,
people will pay attention to the theory. It's very possible.
This is gold. For GU, Eric very obviously took an approach of, I had this awesome idea one time. I can't remember all of it, so if you think it sucks, it's because I can't remember the cool parts. But if you think it looks smart, then you're right, I'm super smart. That way he can pretend it's revolutionary in front of non-physicists and hide behind its incomplete nature in front of physicists. The problem is, of course, that nobody's going to entertain this empty husk of an idea, even if what little was there had any merit to begin with, which of course it doesn't. Eric has the balls to claim that he's figured out dark energy, or whatever the fuck he said, and Sean says, where the shit did you do anything like that? This is physics. Show me data. Show me plots. Make a quantifiable prediction. There is literally no physics here. This is Eric's worst nightmare. The Emperor is shown to have no clothes live in real time. What's the reaction?
Sean.
By the way, this is also a problem in India. क्योंकि अभी क्या हो गया है कि एक टाइम पे गूगल पे आर्टिकल आ जाता था, ऑथेंटिक मान लेते थे कि देखो गूगल के आर्टिकल पे लिखा हुआ है. अब लोग उससे ओवरकम कर गए कि आर्टिकल में कुछ भी कोई भी लिख सकता है. अब रिसर्च पेपर का वो टाइम आ चुका है. अगर कोई क्लेम कर देता है कि मैंने रिसर्च पेपर पब्लिश कर दिया है, तो पढ़ता तो कोई है नहीं यहाँ पर, और एकदम मान लेते हैं कि रिसर्च पेपर में ये हो गया है. दैट्स व्हाई इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि उनको पढ़ के बता दिया जाए कि क्या है उस रिसर्च पेपर में.
And in fact, it's not just...
There's a general saying that goes कि अगर जर्नल का नाम आई से स्टार्ट हो रहा है तो basically नहीं करना चाहिए.
Not in general, क्योंकि एक दो journals हैं which start to die and it's probably okay. But in general,
मतलब मैं
मेरा भी
ऐसे
एक में, क्योंकि मेरा भी एक में है ऐसा, तो
मेरा भी एक में है.
जहां पर भी इंटरनेशनल लगाना पड़ रहा है.
नहीं, but it's generally the case.
First of all, how dare you? Second of all, if you're going to go of the
How dare you read your paper?
How dare you read my paper and comment about that?
How dare you, Sean? You said you hadn't read it. Now you've read it. I wanted to go the rest of my life having zero physicists ever read it so that I can complain until the day I die about physicists not taking me seriously because they're closed-minded jerk faces. Why would you read it? Just to expose my fraudulence?
No, Sean, how dare you cast shade and aspersions of the kind that I wouldn't seek to cast on you, but I will now.
Okay.
I'm not seeking your favor, nor do I need to seek your approval.
Eric, just talk like a normal fucking person. This isn't Victorian England. I would never have dared to cast such aspersions upon you, but you have left me no choice, good sir. A pox upon thee! A pox, I say!
As you know, you failed to gain tenure at the University of Chicago. You're not highly regarded in the field. And again, I'm only returning the shade in which you just yourself cast. I wouldn't have done this otherwise. You then spent time as a non-tenured faculty at Caltech, and you only gain tenure in a non-standard professorship. You're not a leading person in the field.
Hey, Eric, remind me what university you teach at? Oh, nowhere? Like ever? Remind me how many physics publications you have? Oh, none? Like ever? Maybe don't challenge people to dick measuring contests when you have a micro penis.
My belief structure about this is that you imagine that I'm coming to you saying, oh, Sean Carroll, tell me which graph I should do so that I can please you. As you know, because you've read the paper, what you said about Lagrangians is false. What you said about predictions is false. My concern is what you did is that you seized upon something where people have built on my ideas since 1994. The equations that Natty Seiberg and Ed Witten introduced that took over the world were called the insufficiently nonlinear equations when I was at Harvard in 1987 and introduced them.
You didn't introduce any equations, bud. Nobody built on anything you've ever done because you haven't done anything. You're just lying. You can't even write a real physics paper. And while this fiercer Sean is a huge upgrade, I'm afraid it's going to be a while until any scholars interrupt and manhandle frauds like Eric with the kind of relentless vigor you all know I'd like to see.
The question is why appear as an entertainer rather than as a physicist? First of all, neither you nor I are trained as physicists, Sean. You're actually trained as an astronomer.
Yeah, because it's not like astronomers have to use physics or anything. You're acting like he studied basket weaving. Also, there's this field called astrophysics. It would be weird to lump those two things together if they didn't mix, right?
Your intellectually insulting aspect reminds me of you as the Marie Antoinette of theoretical physics influencers. I'm not here to please you. You know that there are tables in the document that you're reading to have plenty of predictions. You know that it solves plenty of problems.
Actually, I'm pretty sure he just pointed out how none of those things are in there, so it's pretty weird for you to keep claiming they are. Sick burn with the Marie Antoinette thing, though. You're such a polymath, Eric.
You and a small cadre of people are like intellectual border collies of the physical sciences, casting shade and aspersions on those who are succeeding where the quantum gravity, string theoretic, and M theoretic programs are failing.
So just telling everyone how much you're winning makes it true, eh, Eric?
Because I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
The fact that you talk like you're in front of Joe Rogan while you're talking to Sean Carroll makes me think you actually have deluded yourself into thinking you're a super genius. It's pretty up there on the list of most pathetic things I've ever seen. Maybe work on writing something that isn't pointless before pretending you've revolutionized all of theoretical physics.
The paper is not giving us any reason to think that this approach is promising. There is no quantum mechanics in the paper. There's no attempt at showing that this solves any of the known problems of quantum gravity. Again, it's not just about Eric, it's about anyone. If you want to make an impact on the physics research community, you have to give them a reason to think that what you do is promising.
Sean reiterates that there's nothing in there, while Eric just scoffs and rolls his eyes, hoping that his earlier baseless assertions will suffice for a few people watching, and he can just slink away from any real physics-based confrontation.
Sean, you have a serious problem with dark energy developing.
One more thing. So I'm kind of confused. I find an asymmetry over here. So what Sean really did was to pick up that paper and essentially make those comments about those papers without considering कि ये एरिक ने भेजा है या यादव ने भेजा है या इसने भेजा है या उसने भेजा है. But when it was Eric's turn, वो शॉन का टेन्योर और शॉन क्या था शिकागो में उस पे क्यों चला?
एक्चुअली इसमें आया नहीं है, बट शॉन उसका रिप्लाई भी करता है कि ऑल्दो मैंने जो भी बात की यहाँ पर पेपर के रिगार्डिंग की, कॉन्सेप्ट के रिगार्डिंग की, एंड यू आर जस्ट डूइंग पर्सनल अटैक, बट एनी केस फिर वो उस चीज को क्लैरिफाई वो भी करते हैं ये. एंड इससे ही दिखता है ना कि व्हेन यू डोंट हैव द आर्गुमेंट्स तो पर्सनल अटैक ही ऑप्शन बचता है.
से देखता है कि भाई पता नहीं कितना वॉच टाइम तुम खर्च करके आए हो इसके ऊपर भाई तुम.
वॉच टाइम मतलब मैंने जो ओरिजिनल वाला है वो देखा था और फिर एक ये देखा.
ओरिजिनल वाला उससे भी लंबा था और ये भी काफी लंबा है, तो
मतलब ये 52 मिनट से
तूने.
ये 52 मिनट से 59, लेकिन ये थोड़ा ज्यादा एंटरटेनिंग, उसमें गैप्स वैप्स काटे हुए हैं ये, क्योंकि कमेंट्री इसलिए 52 लंबा हो गया है. हम लोग का भी 1 घंटा ऊपर हो ही जाएगा.
तो तीसरी बार तुम्हारा ही है, चलो ये भी सही है.
It's going to go right through having being a problem with lambda CDM to eventually being a problem with the Einstein field equations themselves, perched as they are atop the space of metrics as a completely inadequate space of field content. What you've just said, what the aspersion that you've just cast, you are simply not qualified to say. What you have said is that I have given no reason. Let me imagine that paper, which was a draft rushed to get to an April 1st date, remains in a world where Sam Altman and Elon Musk continue to compete for better and better AIs. What would you say if at some point Those AIs then got to that paper and said, holy cow.
एक सेकंड, महाराज का आर्गुमेंट ये है पेपर खराब इसलिए लिखा है क्योंकि जल्दबाजी में लिखना था, 1 अप्रैल को ही सबमिट करना था, लेकिन वो पेपर 2021 में लिखा गया है, 2025 में ये हो रहा है। उसके बाद बहुत टाइम था उस पेपर को सही करने के लिए, कुछ सही नहीं किया इन्होंने।
वर्जन 11 भी तो आ सकता है भाई।
भाई
उस टाइम पे तो अब तक तो एआई भी आ चुका, चैट जीपीटी में डाल देता वो भी सही करके दे
वो भी
देता
सही कर
थोड़ा
देता
सा
है,
तो।
वो बोल देता भाई ऐसा नहीं करना होता है।
What we've been missing.
Yeah, Sean, blah, 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 some stuff to make me sound smart. You're somehow not qualified to critique me, even though you're a real physicist and I'm not. I haven't revised it since, even though that was 4 years ago. And imagine if super awesome future AI figures out that my paper kicks ass. One day I'll be rich and have a hot girlfriend and a flying car, and all you mean jocks will pay. You'll see.
As you well know, there was a revolution in the 1970s, which said that we blew Hamiltonian analysis and that, in fact, every phase space carrying a symplectic form can be treated locally as if that symplectic form is the curvature of a line bundle, and the L2 sections of that line bundle form a Hilbert space, and the P and Q coordinate functions can be promoted to operators. It said that wine is what you get when you stop grape juice from becoming vinegar. You know all this stuff.
ये मतलब
I mean, he just kept blabbing about some stuff.
हाँ,
मतलब I know that मेरे को सारे terms separately पता है, साले ने
लेकिन
क्या
वो connect नहीं हो रहे।
जोड़ के क्या बना दिया इसने, मुझे कुछ समझ नहीं आया है कि हैमिल्टोनियन को बर्डन बना दिया, स्पेस टाइम को पता नहीं कहाँ से इसने भाई ने क्या जोड़ दिया। I think probably same reaction that was what Sean is giving, or maybe he knew exactly what he was talking about. But Sean ने कभी भी इस तरीके से जवाब नहीं दिया कि भाई 10-15 अलग-अलग मास्टर्स ने टर्म्स लेके साथ में उसको कनेक्ट कर दिया।
And I know this stuff. We know the same people. We probably can work in the same notation. My guess is that if you and I got over whatever this bizarre tension is between us and buried the hatchet, my guess is that after 2 days you'd say, boy, I really just didn't understand what he was saying.
Yeah, if we got over this tension of you knowing that I'm a complete fraud who wrote a fake paper to boost my credibility among science illiterate morons on the internet, you'd realize that you just didn't understand my fake paper. But whatever, we know the same stuff, we use the same notation, we're just a couple of crazy physicists trying to navigate this crazy world, right, Sean? Please stop humiliating me. Anyway, that's more or less the end of it. Piers decides to interject and spend the rest of the time asking softball questions about time travel and other pop sci topics, all of which Sean answers intelligently and coherently, while Eric launches into random tangents of pure self-aggrandizement. But Piers, who has been uncharacteristically quiet throughout this exchange, knows he can't go the entire episode without humiliating himself, so let's pivot to making fun of Piers a little bit as he tries to fight with Sean regarding his answer to the final question about what was there before the Big Bang.
नाउ अब ये जो होने वाला है कन्वर्सेशन, दैट इज गोइंग टू बी अबाउट गॉड। तो दिव्यांश, यू माइट हैव अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स टू से हियर।
Big
पहले ही spoil
God
करते हो भाई तुम।
must exist.
For those who believe in the Big Bang theory, what was there before the Big Bang? In other words, what was nothing? And what was there before nothing? And because I do not believe a human brain can answer that question, there must be, de facto, a more superior thing out there that can. Sean.
Well, I'm glad to be the one who frees you from your religious convictions, because the human brain can absolutely tackle that question, and it does so all the time. I encourage viewers/listeners to listen to the upcoming episode of my podcast called Mindscape, where I talk to F. Shorty and Phil Halper about exactly this question: what happened at or before the Big Bang?
Yeah.
We don't know the answer. We don't even know whether the Big Bang was the beginning.
Well, there you go.
So the fact that we don't know doesn't mean we can't know. Those are two very different statements.
Well, if you don't know, you can't know at the moment. Surely you have to admit you don't know.
Well, if you don't know, you can't know. Anytime we don't know something, it means we can't possibly know that thing. Who has ever not known something at one time and then later known it? Nobody. Piers is proudly declaring that learning doesn't exist, which actually fits his personality like a glove.
You will never, as a human being...
I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
No. Actually, like... Yeah, go on.
नहीं मतलब इतना सोचा नहीं होगा ना भाई ने।
Comprehend it, can you?
No, but from this other meta-philosophical angle also, there's a lot of questions that occur to us as very, sane and sound questions, because for starters, they are put in language very well. But it is more about whether you're able to really conceive. For example, मैं एक question देता हूँ, what was there before Big Bang, where Big Bang was the moment जहाँ से time start हुआ था. Now, this question is like grammatically super sound. but then it is essentially, it makes no sense because see, there is no before to begin with, before the Big Bang, because time itself was not there. Before is the notion which is always referenced टाइम है ना. सो ये पॉप कल्चर में इस टाइप के बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस चलते हैं कि व्हाट वाज देयर बिफोर बिग बैंग, या फिर व्हाट इज द पर्पस ऑफ लाइफ. लॉट ऑफ फिलोसोफर्स माइट वांट टू अटैक दैट क्वेश्चन इन दैट मैनर कि भाई आपको लग रहा है कि ये सवाल है क्योंकि आप इसको भाषा में रख पा रहे हो, बट दैट डज नॉट मीन कि ये सवाल है. बट आई एम प्रीटी श्योर पियर्स वुडंट हैव थॉट अबाउट ऑल दिस.
मैं वही बोल रहा हूँ कि भाई ने इतना सोचा नहीं ना इन चीजों के बारे में.
Yeah.
I show that the theory fits the data. That's how we do it.
What
That's
was there
science
before
is.
nothing then? Go on, best guess.
We don't know. My personal favorite theory is there was a pre-existing universe out of which our cosmos arose as a baby universe
And what was there
due to a
before that?
quantum fluctuation.
What was there before that?
No, it's infinite in time in both directions.
So what was there before? So you mean it's never ending?
Yeah. I wrote a book, if you want to read it, Piers.
I do.
From Eternity to Here. It's a great book.
Anyone want to take any bets as to whether Piers picks up that book? I'll give you 1,000 to 1 odds.
I do, but what's there before eternity?
There was no such thing as before eternity. Like, what is less than minus infinity? That's not a sensible question to ask.
Yeah, but I think it's a cop-out by you, if you don't mind me saying this very respectfully, to say that something, if you're saying it's infinite, you don't have to answer the question. You've just made that up. You don't know it was infinite.
This very often happens in the progress of human knowledge, that a question that we thought was an interesting one becomes not answered but shown to be uninteresting because we get a deeper understanding.
See that? I'm sorry. I'm going to come to you, Eric, on this. That seems to me a very pompous answer. That is basically trying to apply a superior intelligence to a response to a lesser mortal by saying that my attempt to get this question answered is so stupid that there should be no need by the brain power in front of me to answer it.
No.
And the thing is that, looked being at the vantage point of Piers, whatever Piers is saying is right. है ना. This is what something that you can relate to Minos paradox कि भाई मेरे को मैं कैसे, like I need to have some faith in order for me to be trying out a different paradigm of things, है ना. क्योंकि जहां तक मेरे को दिख रहा है ये paradigm, I'm kind of convinced. I have no motivation to think ना कि whatever Sean is saying is right or wrong. So that is why, I mean, was it, so I don't remember whoever said whatever quote, but yes, I mean, we are fundamentally people, even as scientists, as people who want to explore truth, that we want to take faith with us. Just not faith specific to God, but faith about like our methods and all of that.
So
Right.
if you
मतलब
see
वही-
carefully, हाँ.
बोल.
So I was saying कि if you see carefully, तो पियर्स ने बहुत सारे आर्गुमेंट ऐसे दिए थे जिनको अगर फिलोसॉफिकल एंगल से देखने जाओगे so इट्स मेकिंग अ लॉट ऑफ सेंस. बट जिस तरीके से, जिस कंटेक्स्ट में वो यूज किए जा रहे हैं और जिस तरीके से यूज किए जा रहे हैं, उनमें एक तरह से प्रॉब्लम आ सकती है.
I mean, looking at one way, of course, it makes sense, looking towards his questions, but depend करता है तुम किस point of view से और किस perspective से वो देख रहे हो. For someone who is not able to contemplate, above that particular mindset, from that perspective, of course, it makes sense. ठीक है. वो बोल रहा है कि, how can there be something not before eternity? How can there be something before not Big Bang? ठीक, कुछ तो होना चाहिए. So अगर तुम्हारा दिमाग उस लेवल पे ही नहीं सोच पा रहा आगे कि भाई क्या हो सकता है, क्या होना चाहिए, and basically surrounding that question, and perhaps I think it makes sense from his point of view. But
Because so basically, like this is also about like the point that Piers raised was not about infinity. It was about how to be reasoning, right? So it was an epistemic point. It was a meta-philosophical point. I don't know what would you want to call it. So in that sense, it genuinely requires like you to adapt that paradigm of thought. The only thing is कि I don't know what Sean Carroll at this stage, as who hasn't seen it further, would reply, because in my experience, this is precisely what takes time. भाई मेरे को ध्यान है when I was in my engineering days कि हम एग्जाम से एक दिन पहले बैठ के पूरा सिलेबस किया करते थे. But that thing cannot possibly happen in philosophy, because philosophy is not a subject to that kind of a progression. It requires these paradigm shifts, right? So I think the best appropriate response to Sean would be that, what, let me first console you that for starters, it is very well appreciated that you are being rational and asking this question that would very very obviously be a concern for you कि भाई ऐसे कैसे बोल दे रहे हो तुम करके, है ना. But then hold on the thought and try to read about it more, try to do this and and after ending this interview, perhaps buy my book and check my podcast out.
No,
Yes.
but I mean, it would have been much better to listen to Piers ki jo wo keh raha hai makes sense or not in a context when when his comments were coming in the spirit of curiosity. ठीक है, उसका वो curiosity में आ ही नहीं रहा था. ठीक है, एक आदमी जब curious होता है तो usually देखते हैं ना कि मैंने ऊपर से अंडा फेंका तो वो jump क्यों नहीं किया, वो फट क्यों गया एकदम से, right? टूट क्यों गया. एंड देन आपको लगे यार तो टूटना नहीं चाहिए था, जंप करना चाहिए, बॉल भी जंप करती है इस तरीके से. So I think that kind of temperament also affects the comment that he's trying to make.
Piers, he's saying that questions which seem legitimate in ignorance sometimes get shown to be nonsensical once a more fundamental understanding is achieved. For example, someone might ask, what kinds of exotic elements might exist in other galaxies? The answer is, all the same ones that exist here. To which the science illiterate person might reply, you're so pompous. How can you possibly know what elements are in other galaxies? You and your stupid ivory tower dogma. Scientists think they're so smart and
All right, I think
I think this is a reduction. This is a reduction by Professor Dave. I don't think that is what was happening. But again,
सो मोर और लेस यही था मेन जो दोनों का रिएक्शन था. इसके बाद ज्यादा कुछ ऐसा है भी नहीं देखने लायक. सो ये पहले तो मैं स्क्रीन शेयर बंद कर देता हूँ, देन आई आस्क यू गाइस. वही बस आई एम आस्किंग योर पर्सपेक्टिव कि ये पूरा देखने के बाद व्हाट्स योर की टेक अवे. सौरभ.
अब यार तुमने एकदम स्पॉटलाइट पे डाल दिया यार, एकदम से थोड़ा सोचना पड़ेगा मेरे को. बट जस्ट ऑन द टॉप ऑफ माय हेड आई थिंक कि दिस वाज नॉट सरप्राइजिंग फर्स्ट, क्योंकि मैंने इस टाइप की जो चीजें हैं वो हम आसपास अपने सोसाइटी में देखते रहते हैं. मजे की बात ये कि इन लोगों को स्पॉटलाइट क्वाइट इजीली मिल जाता है. ठीक है, अब बात यह है कि उनको एक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होनी चाहिए ना, किस तरीके से हमें बोलना है या किस तरीके से हमें चीजों को प्रेजेंट करना है, विच इज देयर इन द साइंटिफिक डोमेन एंड ऑलमोस्ट एक्सेप्टेबल बाय द साइंटिफिक कम्युनिटी. हाउएवर the problem that persists is that these people, of course, they believe that what they know is absolute truth. Okay, so they're of course not open to this, again, there's a scientific temperament. तो उसके वजह से जो उनका distrust आता है towards what the academia is doing, I think that causes the real issue and the real pain in the ass which Sean was facing at the moment. And I feel कि भाई Sean भाई का जो अभी दर्द था वही सेम दर्द मेरे को भी दिख रहा है कि अगर मैं होता उस जगह पे तो मैं क्या करता पता नहीं है. पर आई रियली think Sean really maintained his peace of mind and he did what he could do best.
सो इफ यू नोटिस वन थिंग, तो जैसे कि वाइनस्टाइन जो कर रहा था कि एकदम डर्ट फेंक रहा था लाइक शॉन कैरोल के करियर के ऊपर कि तुम्हें यहाँ ये पोजीशन नहीं मिली थी, और बहुत सारी ऐसी जगह था जहां पर वो काफी बदतमीजी वगैरह ट्राई किया था. कुड दिस माइट बी द रीजन कि जो लोग एकदम एकेडमिया में हैं वो लोग ऐसे लोगों से ज़्यादा इंगेज करना पसंद नहीं करते हैं, बिकॉज वो थोड़ा ज़्यादा एकेडमिक वे में बात करते हैं, उनका एंगेजमेंट स्टाइल अलग होता है. लेकिन ये जो लोग रहते हैं जो पॉपुलर लेवल पे अपने सूडो साइंटिफिक या सूडो इंटेलेक्चुअल बातें फैला रहे होते हैं, दे नो कि किस तरीके से फालतू फालतू तरीके से डिबेट में अपने आप को डोमिनेट करना है. अगर उनके पास कोई आर्गुमेंट ना रहे तो सामने कोई गंदा सा एलिगेशन लगा लो, एक गंदे तरीके से बात कर लो. कुड दिस बी द रीजन कि बहुत सारे एकेडमिया के लोग आना नहीं पसंद करते ऐसे कन्वर्सेशन?
100%, 100%. I would say 100%. I mean, honestly, like my takeaway is not even about science. For starters, science के about ज़्यादा discussion हुआ भी नहीं, अगर if you would have observed ना. So as analytical thinkers, we should also not be asserting as a knowledge proposition कि एरिक वाइंस्टाइन जो बोल रहा है, वाइंस्टाइन है ना उसका नाम, क्या नाम है? वाइंस्टाइन. हाँ, वो जो बोल रहा है वो गलत बोल रहा है, क्या पता सही बोल रहा हो. लेकिन द ओनली थिंग इज, for whatever we are disposed to, about which we can make bets and all of that, it appears that for someone who cannot psychologically be upfront and analytical with his reasoning, that he would commit fallacies like ad hominem and all of that, which are like but obvious fallacies. ठीक है. एंड he actually, by the way, he described his motivation कि भाई अच्छा शॉन तूने भी किया है ना तो मैं भी करेगा. That in itself is like चलो you can also take a higher ground ना. You are तो a good so-called smart ass, right? But no. So if this has been the case, then it is, as consumers who wouldn't even want to concern with the theories, a very nice gesture for us to know, a hint for us to know that who might more likely be right and wrong. So yes, there is that.
Nice. All right. Thank you guys for this reaction and see you again later. Done.